What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Smash JT. There is a lot to talk about. There's a ton of stuff going on right now. It's kind of hard to keep track of. I could have made like 38 videos on each individual topic, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to mash it all together and just talk about my thoughts on what's going on in the game industry right now, because after what feels like 4 months of very little news and information about everything, it's starting to get pretty insane. Okay, so where do we even start? I guess I'll start off with the most recent news and go from there, but Hyrule Warriors is getting a sequel, and the sequel of Hyrule Warriors is a prequel to Breath of the Wild. Age of Calamity is what it's called, and apparently it's gonna take place 100 years before the events that occur in Breath of the Wild, which is fantastic news. Now, I do know that the original Hyrule Warriors was pretty divisive, at least initially at launch. There were a lot of people that were just not really feeling it, especially when they first heard about it, and I was one of those people. But after I got it, gave it a shot, I was like, okay, yeah, I could definitely vibe with this. This basically Dynasty Warrior take on The Legend of Zelda worked really well, and people were slow to get to it because it was on the Wii U. It didn't have the biggest sales, but then it came out on the 3DS with all the DLC included on it, and then subsequently relaunched again on the Nintendo Switch for more people to have a chance to check it out. And well worth the time. If you haven't played the original Hyrule Warriors, I highly recommend it. So this new Hyrule Warriors is going to dive into the backgrounds and the lore from Breath of the Wild and the champions, who basically there were hints at pointing at what it was like, but Breath of the Wild didn't really have much of a storyline. That was one of the major complaints a lot of people had, including myself, with Breath of the Wild. Love the game, fantastic experience, but left a lot to be desired as far as storyline. So Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity has the chance to redeem the miscues of what the original Breath of the Wild did, where they can actually go into the background of the champions and show the lore and what happened with Ganondorf, or Calamity Ganon, or whatever you want to call it, back 100 years before Link was awoken at the start of Breath of the Wild. So there's a lot of meat on that bone. This entire new generation of Zelda has so much potential, and a little bit of me was frustrated that they announced this initially, because I'm like, oh, that means Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be delayed even further because they don't want a close launch to what Age of Calamity is going to be. And it seems like that's what the case is. Maybe it's one of those, Breath of the Wild 2 is taking longer than they expected, so this would be a good in-between just to satisfy the fans' need for more Zelda in their life, while at the same time allowing Nintendo to have a title this holiday season. Because going into holiday 2020, there's not really that much outside of the recently announced Super Mario 3D All-Stars or whatever. That's really it. And that's basically just a re-release of a bunch of games that people already have. So yes, it's exciting, but it's not something that's completely, shifting the entire dynamic of what gaming is. With the announcement of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, it gives Nintendo something to fight with during holiday 2020 against the Xbox and PlayStation. There's going to be heavy competition, and up until this point I was starting to wonder what Nintendo was even going to have to get people excited about the Nintendo Switch holiday 2020. Is it the best thing in the world? I mean, no, it's not. I'm going to be honest, it's not the best thing. Breath of the Wild 2 being announced would have been the best thing, but you know what? This isn't a bad second to that. I'll take it. Based off of the release date of November 20th, 2020 for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, I would imagine Next year is going to look something like, if they do go forward with the 35th anniversary celebration of Zelda, which is heavily rumored right now for 2021, there may be a collection of Zelda games coming to the Switch, similar to what they're doing with the Mario 3D All-Stars thing. But after that, I would imagine that Breath of the Wild 2, assuming everything is on track, should hopefully make a holiday 2021 release date, which is way longer than a lot of people would have liked to see for that game. But at the same time, there's a pandemic going across the world right now. So, I mean, beggars can't be choosers when it comes to Zelda stuff. That's where we're standing right now with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Moving on to some other news that was just completely bonkers. The Xbox Series S got leaked last night, and it looks like a mini speaker. And, I mean, whatever, I don't really care what it looks like as long as it plays well. Just an interesting dynamic with this, because it's got a price of $299.99 USD, which is incredibly cheap for next gen technology. And based off of the specs right now that are rumored, we got people saying that it's going to have the same CPU and GPU, but for some reason won't be able to run the games at a high resolution like they will be on the Xbox One Series X. Good Lord, these names are atrocious, and for the average consumer, they're not going to have any idea what they're even going to the store to buy, but the price will be the differentiation for them. $299.99 USD MSRP for the S, and most likely we're looking at $500 for the X. And based off of just initial impressions from this thing, it's only got, 512 gigs for SSD? That's not very much. Like, there, as far as I understand, there are some Xbox One games right now that are approaching that in size. Like the Halo Master Chief Collection is gigantic. What's it, like 100 gigs or something? So, I mean, how many games would you even be able to download on it? And, oh, by the way, there's no disk drive, so it's digital only, and it's going to have barely any hard drive space. So what it seems like is this box is going to be heavily marketed towards those for streaming games and for Game Pass, and that's it. Maybe if you want to buy an expanded hard drive, but then you're adding cost to it. And if you're going to do that, why not just get the Xbox One X at that point? Xbox One Series X. God, these names. But yeah, that is interesting. It's an interesting development, because I honestly did not see next generation consoles approaching that price point of $299.99. That's the price of a Nintendo Switch. So that's insanely low relative to what some people were speculating these could cost, and definitely an entry price for a lot of casuals that want to start gaming next generation. The Xbox Series S is so cheap that it's going to be putting Sony in a precarious position as far as price. That's really putting them in a corner. I didn't see the PlayStation 5, even the all-digital one, falling below the price point of $399.99, which to me was pretty cheap. So beating that by $100 is insane. Now, people might say, oh, the PlayStation has the exclusives, they have this, they have that, and you can play all the Microsoft games, all the exclusive games on a PC, so why would you buy the Xbox One S in the first place? There's a lot of haters out there against it, and I'm not going to hate on this thing, because there's plenty of casual people that want to game next generation that don't have a super powerful computer. And where are you going to buy components for a computer to run these next gen games for $299? You can't. So it's definitely an option for those that aren't PC gamers. It's an option for those that have a good PC but want to be able to play these games on a console, on their TV, that don't want to go through setting their PC up to their TV. There's a lot of reasons why people would be interested in the Xbox One Series S, and that price point was extremely important for them to be able to hit. As far as Sony's concerned, they are going to have some sincere competition right now, because if they can't match $299 with their all digital, which I don't see them doing, then they're losing some sales to that. There are going to be people that just want to buy a cheap next-gen console. $299 is just so hard to say no to. So that is going to be Microsoft's angle, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the next-gen war, the console war, goes. Because yes, as much as these companies deny there being a console war, it is. They want to sell. It's always about the money. Follow the dollar. Got what is it? Phil Spencer saying, I think it's Phil Spencer saying that he doesn't care if they even sell consoles or games. Like, get out of here. No, they care. They want to sell as many as possible. That's business. And ultimately, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this unfolds when these consoles come out later in 2020. But anyways, that is my thoughts on what's going on right now. It is absolutely insane with these two news stories. There's plenty of other things to talk about too. Like, there was a leaked Ninja Gaiden, whatever you want to call it, trilogy that's coming to next-gen consoles, potentially. A few other little things, but the two big ones I want to talk about was the Zelda game that completely took me by surprise, and I'm very, very excited about, looking forward to, and hopefully they do a good job filling out the storyline for the Breath of the Wild universe. But ultimately, it's just making me even more excited for Breath of the Wild 2. I'm going to leave the video right there. Let me know what you guys think about these crazy news stories that just came out over the past 12 hours and where you stand on it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing.